We are in Torah Yud Bet, called Te'ilah LeDavid. We are in the middle of part 1 of Torah Yud Bet. Okay. Says Rebbe Nachman. We're speaking about someone who's learning Torah, and we're speaking about something, a concept that Rebbe Nachman gets from the Zohar called Shedin Yehudayin. Shedin Yehudayin is someone that on the outside, for all appearances, he looks like a Jew. Okay? He could be also following Torah and mitzvot, right? So on the outside, the actions of the person, the words of the person, his appearance is all Jewish. But he's lacking the soul. He's lacking the neshama. He's lacking what's called Yirat Shamayim. What's the soul? The soul is the fear of Hashem, the awe of the Ribono Shel Olam. It's all about integrity. It's all about dveikut, a real connection to Hashem. And that's the most important aspect of all Torah and mitzvah. It's about real emunah, that Ribono Shel Olam is the creator, constant creator, and constant source of all that is. And I'm constantly within his presence. I'm constantly in his presence. And I have to constantly act. And I constantly act how I would act in the presence of Hashem because I'm aware of that. So it's not so much the importance here, the actual actions of the person, because the actions of the person can be identical between someone that's called a real tzaddik, a real Talmid Chacham, and someone that's called Shed Yehudi. Shed Yehudi, this concept literally means a Jewish demon. So, right? So on the outside, he looks Jewish, he's acting Jewish, everything he's doing is Jewish, but he's lacking the soul. He's lacking the Yirat Shamayim, and that has an effect, right? So obviously, not everything is going to be according to the Torah, because what comes out of that is that in certain situations he will start speaking with hatred against tzaddikim, against the Torah, against people that are serving Hashem, and they might even do it in the name of the Torah. They might do it in the name of the Torah because they see themselves and they act on the outside like someone who is following the Torah and the mitzvot, but they're lacking the fear of Hashem. They're lacking the Yirat Shamayim, and that causes lack in integrity, and that causes them to speak negatively against Hashem and against Hashem's tzaddikim. So maybe against Hashem they won't speak negatively, but it will speak against Hashem's tzaddikim. And that's the big thing. That's the big point here. And so that's what we see in the word shade. We spoke about this, we touched upon this a little bit last time. The word shade itself, the difference between what does the word shade represent? The word shade represents the two letters of Shin Daled Yud, which is one of Hashem's name, but it's the letters that represent the physical, it represents the vessel, it represents the body aspect of the world, the physical aspect of the world. Whereas the Yud in the Shin Daled Yud represents the soul of the world. And that's the Yirat Shamayim, that's the dveikut, the connection to Ribono Shel Olam. And so when we're saying that these people are called Shedin Yehudayin, Jewish demons, it's really because of this, they are living a life of the Shin Daled from the Shin Daled Yud, lacking the Yud, they're lacking the soul, they're lacking the Yud. Yud is always the dveikut, it's always that higher consciousness, the consciousness of Hashem, the emunah and the Ribono Shel Olam, the recognition that we're constantly in Hashem's presence. And these are the two ends of the spectrum that Rebbe Nachman sets before us. He says, on the one hand, you have a real Talmid Chacham, a Talmid Chacham that is connected to the Yud, he's connected to Hashem by learning Torah Lishma, learning Torah with the right intentions, and he's experiencing that connection. In his learning the Torah, he's experiencing the connection, a live connection with the Ribono Shel Olam. Whereas on the other end of the spectrum, you have this person who's also learning Torah, but he's doing it for the wrong intentions. He's doing it in order to make a business out of it. He's doing it in order to be respected by other people through his Torah, to be called a rabbi because of his Torah. And he's not doing this, he's not experiencing that connection because he is serving himself. When he is learning that Torah, he's serving himself. He's doing it just like anyone else does anything in this life, usually for their own benefit, their own personal benefit, their own gain, like some sort of subject, like a subject in university, right? To be like a professor, so he gets respected and he makes money out of it, and he lives his life from that. But he doesn't have that connection and doesn't have that fear of Hashem. And so these are the two sides. You have the real Talmid Chacham, the holy Talmid Chacham, that's learning Torah Lishma, and that's Yaakov, that's represented by Yaakov. On the other hand, on the other side, you have Lavan. And Lavan is this aspect of the demon, the Jewish demon, the Shed Yehudi. So says Rabbi Nachman, כשאדם לומד בקדושה ובטהרה, איזה דין ופסק שחידש איזה תנא או צדיק אחר, על ידי זה נעשה בחינת נשיקין, ונשיקין זה בחינת התדבקות רוחה ברוחה. כי הפסק הזה הוא דיבורו של התנא, ודיבור הוא החיות כמו שכתוב לנפש חיה, ותרגומו לרוח ממללה. And so we also touched upon this last time, how there are two tzaddikim. There is, from the real tzaddikim, you have the tzaddik that's called the tzaddik from above, and you have the tzaddik from below, and the Shekhinah is in between the two. The Shekhinah is the bridge between the two. The Shekhinah is the connection between the two. The higher, the tzaddik from above, the higher tzaddik is the tzaddik that he innovated, and he was mechadesh. He taught this Torah. He is the Tana that taught this Torah. So, for example, in the Likutei Moharan, that would be Rabbi Nachman. If you're learning Zohar, and you say you're learning something from Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, so Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is the higher tzaddik, the tzaddik from above. And then the lower tzaddik, the tzaddik from below, the tzaddik in this world, that's referring to you, who is learning this Torah. And when you're speaking the words of this Torah, of that tzaddik from above, the words of the Torah, okay, and all of this Torah is considered oral Torah, because as we said, that all of the chidushim of Torah is considered oral Torah. That is the aspect of Shechina, that's the aspect of Malchut, as we explained, that Malchut, the Zohar says, in Tikkun Zohar, in the introduction of Tikkun Zohar, Malchut Peh, Torah shebe'al Peh Kerinan La. Malchut is the mouth, and we call her the oral Torah. Okay? And so when you're speaking these words of Torah, of the higher, of the tzaddik from above, in between you and that tzaddik, you have this energy, you have this light, you have this world called Malchut, the Shechina. And that's the chidushim of Torah themselves. That's the chidush of Torah itself that you're learning, or that halacha. You learn a halacha and Shulchan Aruch. And so when you do this, when you're learning this Torah, this tzaddik, there's a type of unification that is happening. And this unification is called Zivug de Neshikin. So in Kabbalah, the Arizal explains, in Eitz Chaim, there are two types of unifications. Because every world is made up of two parts. Every world, all of the 10 sefirot can be categorized in two big main categories. What are they? What's called in the words in Kabbalah, they're called, the name that is given to it in Kabbalah is Gar and Zat. These are acronyms. Gar is an acronym for Gimel Rishonot, which means the three first ones. And these are the three first sefirot of every world. That's the Keter, Chochmah, and Bina. And Zat is an acronym for Zayin Tachtonot, which means the 7 lower ones, the 7 lower sefirot of each world. And they are different categories because the Gar is the first 3, right, are the sefirot of consciousness, and they are the soul of that world. Whereas the Zat, the last 7 of each world represent the body of that world. Okay, that's the physical, so to speak, right? Relatively, that's the physical aspect of that world. So every world is made up of Gar and Zat. It's made up of a soul and a body. It's made up of the 3 first sefirot and the 7 lower sefirot. And unification has to happen on every level. Unification, what is a unification in Kabbalah? What's the unification, the yichud that we're always speaking about? A unification, everything in Kabbalah is always based on yichudim. That's the purpose of rectifying, of fixing, of healing. Everything is a yichud. It's a unification. What's a unification? What does it represent? What does it mean? What does it stand for? The significance of a unification is a sweetening. It's a hamtaka. Okay, so what does that mean? That means that in the world of oneness, of the Ribbon Shalom, from Hashem's perspective, that there's nothing but Hashem, then there is nothing that needs to be rectified. Everything is already perfect. Everything is in its state of ultimate perfection. But there is no everything. There's only one. There's only Hashem. Okay? Once Hashem created the world, the universe, all the many, many parts of the universe on a spiritual level and on a physical level, and there is this separateness, there are these different, many, many parts to the universe and many different levels, even in the spiritual realm. All of that was for a purpose. Why did Hashem create all these different parts of all these different worlds, all these different levels, many, many, many levels, millions and millions and millions of levels from one world to the other, and within each world? Hashem created this in order to reveal the splendor and the glory of Hashem, that from the lowest level, they should all be reconnected to the one. And there should be a revelation of the one from the many. And this is, Rabbi Nachman says that this is the importance of why in halacha, one of the biggest rules in halacha is yachid berabim halacha kerabim. One of the biggest rules in halacha is that when you have an argument between one and many, we follow the many. And the reason for that is because there is nothing more beloved to Hashem, there's nothing more significant in Hashem's eyes, conceptually also, than when you have many different people all agreeing on one. So that's a combination of the many into one. So when you have one person that says his opinion, that's very nice, he has his opinion. But when you have many people that are all combining, they're all being combined and having that same opinion and agreeing on the one opinion, that's much more significant in Hashem's eyes, because that's the way Hashem created the world. Hashem's intention in creating the world is from this world, this illusion of the many, they should all come to admit and recognize the one. Okay? So, therefore, now that we have all these many different levels of all these many different worlds that Hashem created, our intention, our purpose, living this existence, is to come to be reunited with the Ribbon Shalom. And so what that means is that there are millions of many, many different levels of, in each one of these levels, why is one level higher than a lower level? What determines the how high or how low, how superior and how inferior a certain level is in relation, in relative to what are they considered this level higher and that level lower. It's all relative to Hashem, to the revelation, to a higher revelation of the Ribbon Shalom, a higher revelation of Hashem. So the higher worlds, over there Hashem is revealed in a greater way. The lower worlds, Hashem is concealed. Okay? Absolute revelation of Hashem, how He is, that's impossible in any of these worlds. They would not exist if Hashem was revealed the way He actually is. Right? So when Hashem began creating the worlds, He had to conceal Himself, and then He only allowed Himself to be revealed in each world according to how much that world can handle from Hashem's infinite power. And so, all of the many, many billions of levels in each world, billions of worlds, the higher the world, it means that Hashem is revealed in a greater way. The lower the world, Hashem is concealed. Hashem is revealed in a lesser way, in that lower world. And so what is the tikkun of the world all about? The tikkun of the world is all about, as we learn in Kabbalah, yichudim, unification. What is unification? What does that do? All of these yichudim. It's a sweetening. What does it mean, a sweetening? It means that the higher world is combined with the lower world, and it shines the light. It shines the consciousness. It shines that recognition of Hashem that it is experiencing in that higher place, so that the lower place can also experience that. And then the lower place is elevated to that state of consciousness, that connection to Hashem, that experiencing the revelation of Hashem that the higher place is experiencing. And then, so that is a sweetening. That's called the sweetening. Because the higher the world, the more revealed Hashem is, the more chesed. The more it's an aspect of chesed, kindness. The lower the world is, the more it's experiencing an aspect of din, judgment, and concealment. Chesed, kindness, is always revelation. Din, judgment, is always a concealment. So a higher world is more chesed, a lower world is more din. It's more judgment. And when the higher world shines its light through that unification, shines its light to the lower world, it sweetens the judgment energy, relative, right, so to speak, what's called concealment. It sweetens that concealment of the lower world, and that lower world is now elevated to experience Hashem the way the higher world experiences. And because of that, that causes a ripple effect. Because of that, now the higher world is also elevated to, there's a unification with the world above it, and it is elevated to the world above it, and then the world above that is elevated, and everything is elevated. It's almost like an escalator, right? So every step that goes up, all the other steps underneath it are also going up one more step. And this is the tikkun of the world. And so we're constantly in this escalator. We're constantly going up one step after another step. Those above us are shining to us from the revelation of Hashem that they have experienced. We are shining to those below us from the revelation of Hashem that we have experienced. And like that, we are all, each of us, ascending to a higher level. And this happens also in the higher worlds. And happens in effect. The effect of us doing this down here is that it also happens in the higher worlds. Okay? And so this is the aspect, this is the concept of what unification and sweetening of judgment is all about. We see in Kabbalah constantly. Yechudim and Hamtakat Adinim. Yechudim is the unification, Hamtakat Adinim is the sweetening of judgment. And that's the foundation, that's the purpose of everything that we're doing. Now, because as we began saying, every world is made up of two parts. It's made up of Gar and Zat, we said, the three first ones and the seven lower ones. The three first ones is the aspect of each world, it's called the soul of that world, and the lower ones is the body, so to speak, of that world. And so therefore, when we are speaking about Yichudim that have to happen, the unifications and the connections that have to happen, which bring about these types of sweetening, and more revelation of Hashem in those places. So every world has the unification in two levels. It has what's called zivug de neshikin and zivug de gufa. Zivug de neshikin is a unification of the first three spirot, and what it means literally is unification of kissing. And just like we have our physical body is a metaphor for the spiritual, so in our physical body, when there's a unification, a connection between a husband and wife, an intimate connection between a husband and wife in the higher part of the body, so then that's a kissing that's happening. Why is that a unification? What is being combined? What is being unified between the two? It's the breath. The breath is being connected, and the breath is an aspect of the spiritual. It's an aspect of the soul within a person. Right? Neshima, the word for breath in Hebrew, has the same, it sounds like the word neshama, which is the soul of a person. And that's represented by the three first spherot. And so just like in the physical body, you have a connection of kissing, and that's a connection, a combination of the two breaths, of the two ruchot. Yeah? So this is also in the higher world, obviously in a completely spiritual way, that we have no ability to grasp. But this world is a metaphor for that world. There is a yichud, a zivuga de nishikin, and that's the connection that happens on this level, on the level of the three first spherot, on the level of consciousness, the level of soul. And then there's also zivuga de gufa, which is the body relative, right? So to speak, the body, because we're speaking in spiritual worlds, there is no body. But relative to the soul, it's considered a body, it's considered a vessel next to the light. And there's also a connection between in that part, in the part of the 7 lower sefirot. So now in this Torah here in Rabbi Nachman, we're focusing on the higher unification, the unification of the 3 first sefirot called Zivugad and Neshikim, the unification of kisses, of kissing, which is a unification between the 2 types of ruach, the 2 ruchot, okay, the 2 souls. And this is happening, says Rabbi Nachman, whenever we learn Torah. Whenever we learn Torah, and we're learning the words of that Tana. Right now we're learning the words of Rabbi Nachman. The words of the Tana, what he innovated, what he was mechadesh, right? What he taught, that is his ruach, that's his soul. And it's coming out of his mouth. It's coming out of his mouth, and it's now in my mouth as well. It's coming out of my mouth. Okay, and so this energy, this chidush, which we said is malchut, we said it's shechina. The Shekhinah is in his mouth, that energy of life, the words, the chidush of Torah that is coming out of his mouth, and now it's in my mouth, and it's connecting between the 2 of us. So my ruach, the energy of my speech, my malchut, is now unified with the ruach of Rabbi Nachman, or Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, or whichever tzaddik, whatever Tana, whatever Amora that you're learning his Torah. And so right now, a unification on the level of neshikin, of kisses, is happening. There's a unification between our spirits, our souls, that is happening. Okay, kissing is an aspect of unification of the 2 spirits. Okay, the 2 ruchot. כי הפסק הזה הוא דיבורו של התנא. ודיבור הוא החיות, כמו שכתוב הוא לנפש חיה, ותרגומו לרוח ממללה, because this halacha, or this Torah that the Tana, the tzaddik from above, he innovated and he taught, that dibur, that speech that he spoke, was his chiyus, it was his life energy. The life energy of man is in his speech. As it says, when Hashem drew breath, he put breath into man, he was able from that to speak. So life, as we know it, lenefesh chaya, when we became a living soul, the targum of that is that we became a speaking spirit. Now we're able to speak because of that life that Hashem put into us. So the speech of the Tana, the speech of the tzaddik, the chidush, the Torah that he taught, is his life energy. And now it's in my mouth. Now I am speaking it. And that's connecting, that's combining and unifying between the 2 of us. Okay? ורוח ממללה הוא הנפש חיה, היא באה מתורה שבעל פה, כמו שכתוב, תוצא הארץ נפש חיה, נמצא בשעה שמחדש התנא איזה חידוש, ומדבר זה החידוש, זה הדיבור בעצמו, היא בחינת התורה שבעל פה שחידש, כי משם הוצאה, כמו שכתוב, תוצא הארץ נפש חיה. נמצא עכשיו, כשלומדים את החידוש הזה, כשמכניסים הלימוד והחידוש בתוך הפה, נמצא שמדבקין רוח הצדיק שחידש, זה החידוש עם רוח ממללה. היינו אם הרוח הלומד זה החידוש עכשיו. וזאת ההתדבקות רוחה ברוחה נקרא נשיקין. נמצא כשלומדים איזה הלכה שחידשו התנאים, על ידי זה נדבק רוח התנא עם רוח הלומד, ודומה כאילו נושק את עצמו עם התנא. אבל תלמיד חכם, שד יהודי כשלומד גמרא או פסק דין, עליו כתוב נעתרות נשיקות שונא, כי התנא אינו יכול לסבול רוחו של תלמיד חכם שד יהודאין, כי מי יכול לסבול לנשק את עצמו עם נבלה, כל שכן שנבלה טובה ממנו. So he says like this. Now he explains it a little bit differently. He says like this. He says, when the Tana speaks the words of the Torah, specifically, because there are many types of speech that a person can speak, okay? All speech is really the life energy of the person which is being expressed. But specifically, when a person speaks Torah, or when a person, like the Tana, he innovated and he was mechadish, these new words, this new teaching of Torah, that he taught, that is itself the source of life, of that life energy. So all speech really is taking Torah and using it for whatever it is that we are speaking. Because at the source, the life energy within us that gives us the ability to speak is the Torah. Okay, that's the ruach that Hashem blew into man. now we can serve Hashem and do as He wishes, and use that life energy, use that energy from the Torah, which is called Malchut, which is called Shechina. We can use it to fulfill the wishes of Hashem, to fulfill the Torah and the mitzvot, and to speak in a pure and holy way. And then that's called using the Malchut and for Hashem and crowning Hashem as king. Or when a person speaks in an improper way, he's taking that life energy that is sourced in the Shechina, it's sourced in the Torah, and he's disconnecting it from Hashem, and he's taking the Malchut of Hashem, and he's crowning idols, he's crowning other energies, he's making himself king, for example, his ego, right? So now when the Tana uses his power of speech in the proper way, and he teaches something new in Torah, so he is speaking words that are in its most perfected state. He is speaking words which are connected to their source. The source of all words, as we said, is the Torah, is the oral Torah. And now when I am doing the same, and I am speaking these words of the Tana from my mouth, and I'm making a unification between my power of speech, my ability to speak, and I'm connecting it to the words of the Tana, which is also the Torah. So there's this connection that's happening, that has happened in the past, between the Tana, the tzaddik from above that taught this Torah, and he had a connection between his life energy and its source. And then that is also happening here below, that I am combining this Torah, which is the source of speech, of the ability to speak, with my life energy, with my ability to speak. And in between the two, there's a connection that's happening, as we said before, a unification of neshikin, of a kissing that is happening, combining my spirit and the spirit of the tzaddik in this moment. And so therefore Rabbi Nachman says it's as if you are kissing the tzaddik when you're learning his Torah. It is as if you're kissing the tzaddik when you're learning the Torah. And that's why he says the tzaddik doesn't want to kiss anyone. He doesn't want to kiss someone who is, as we said before, a Jewish demon, Shed Yehudi. Why? Well, obviously he's unholy, and he's disconnected from Hashem. But even more than that, the Gemara teaches us that the Jewish demon, the Shed Yehudi, that is lacking the Yud, is lacking that connection to Hashem, and he lives his life centered around the fulfillment of his own ego. The Gemara tells us that he's considered like a body without a soul. As we said in the past, we said it at the beginning of Torah Yud Bet. He's considered as a nevela tova emenu. The Gemara says that a dead carcass is better than him. So if a dead carcass is better than him, says Rabbi Nachman, the tzaddik definitely doesn't want to kiss a dead carcass. That's what Rabbi Nachman says. The tzaddik definitely doesn't want to connect his soul, his spirit, his breath with the breath of death, of this dead carcass, which is the Shed Yehudi. And so the tzaddik doesn't want to have anything to do with this person who's learning Torah. It's terribly difficult for the tzaddik to have that Shed Yehudi learning his Torah. He could be a Rosh Yeshiva, he could be sitting in a yeshiva and have a long beard and everything, but he is lacking that Yirat Shamayim, is lacking that connection to Hashem, and he has the wrong intentions. And when he learns the Gemara, and when he learns the Torah of these tzaddikim, of these Tanaim and these Amoraim, those Tanaim don't want to have anything to do with it. For them, it's painful to have him connecting to them on that level, that their soul, that their energy, their life energy should be connected to this Shed Yehudi, to this Jewish demon, which, as the Gemara says, a dead carcass is better than him. And so, on the other hand, if a tzaddik learns the Torah, so it brings tremendous happiness to the Talmid Chacham. It brings tremendous happiness to the tzaddik that taught this Torah. the tzaddik from above, because not only is he connecting, by connecting to the tzaddik from above, the tzaddik from below being connected to the tzaddik from above, there is also a reviving of the tzaddik from above that is happening. Because here on this world, by him learning the Torah of the tzaddik from above and connecting, I am connecting right now my life energy to the spirit of the tzaddik, to the spirit of Rebbe Nachman. So that is causing a revival of the life energy in Rebbe Nachman. And to a point where the Gemara says in Masechet Yevamot that when we learn the Torah of a tzaddik, and I say the Torah in the name of that tzaddik, I say, let's say, I'm learning right now this from Rabbi Nachman, I'm saying this in his name. So through that connection, the Gemara says, his lips, the lips of the tzaddik, are moving, they are speaking in his grave. As I am speaking these words here, his lips are also speaking, because that means that there is a revival that is happening on some level to Rabbi Nachman, to the tzaddik from above. Because I have connected my life energy to that Torah, and that bridge is there, and that connection is made, and so there's a revival to the tzaddik, and that's this unification that we're speaking about, of the unification of neshikin, of a kiss. So the tzaddik gets out of it the fact that he has a continuation in this world, and we're considered his children in this world. The tzaddik from above has that benefit, and we have the benefit that we are receiving this light, as we said, from the world above. This is what happens on every level. Throughout all the worlds, the spiritual worlds in Kabbalah, we see that the higher world receives from the unification, by the higher world sweetening the lower world and bringing to them the revelation, bringing to the lower world the revelation of Hashem as it is experiencing it. So it has a continuation, it has an extension now. It's just like when a man has a wife, okay? So he is dedicated to bringing all of this wonderful life to his wife, to supporting her and to giving her a home and a family and all that, right? And so he's giving and giving and is giving. What's he getting out of it? Now he has a continuation, he has an extension, he has expanded his existence. And so the tzaddik from above has now an expansion of his existence. He has an extension of his existence in this physical world. We are like his descendants, because his energy, his chiddush, his soul is alive in this world as we're speaking his Torah. Because there's a connection that has happened by me now between my life energy, my power of speech, and the Torah of that tzaddik. It's one. I'm speaking the Torah of that tzaddik with my life energy. So the life of that tzaddik, the soul of that tzaddik is now alive in this world. So he has an extension in this world. We are his descendants. That's the Gemara says this. So many places that when you teach someone Torah, it's as if you have given birth to that person. That person is like your child because he is an extension of you. Okay, and you obviously have tremendous benefit from this, because the lower world has obviously tremendous benefit from now receiving the revelation of Hashem, that sweetening that is from such a much greater. Now there's an expansion that the lower world has experienced because of that light it has received from the higher world. So both sides are benefiting. But specifically, when in this context, specifically, this benefit is when the lower side is worthy, when the lower world is worthy. But if the lower world, the lower place, the person who's speaking, the tzaddik from below, is not really a tzaddik, he's a shade Yehudi, he's a Jewish demon, and his a dead carcass is better than him, so he's worse than a dead carcass. So then the tzaddik from above doesn't want that this should be an extension of him. Imagine someone marrying a woman who's completely in the worst way possible. Okay, so he doesn't want that should be his wife. He doesn't want that she should be the expansion of his existence, that she should be the continuation, she should be his family. That, right? Especially if she doesn't want to have a family, right? So this is all a metaphor for what's going on. the tzaddik above and the tzaddik below, and the Shekhinah between the two, the life energy and the Torah. The Torah is the source of all the life energy. And it's a metaphor for also what's happening and is taught in Kabbalah in all of the higher worlds. Okay, what's called the unifications in the higher worlds. And so this is something that we're going to explore further, Bezrat Hashem, in the continuation of this Torah in the coming classes, in the coming shiurim.